House Democrats are moving closer towards holding Attorney General William Barr in contempt of Congress after the Justice Department failed to provide an unredacted version of the Mueller report to lawmakers. Joining me now to discuss this and also important developments on the international scene is Independent Senator Angus King from Maine. Senator, thank you so much for being with us. I want to read you some reporting from our congressional reporter, Manu Raju, whom you know from running away from him probably much of the time on Capitol Hill. He reports this morning, Mitch McConnell will take to the floor this morning to say it's time to move on from the Mueller probe and call the case closed, per his office. Do you think the majority leader is right that it is a matter of case closed? He doesn't want to hear from Robert Mueller on Capitol Hill.
No, I don't think the case is closed. I went back last night, John, and read sections of the report, reread. I read the whole thing a couple of weekends ago, and Mr. Barr really did misrepresent what was in the report. In the first place, on that first chapter, the first section of the report about collusion, he didn't find no collusion. What he found was no criminal conspiracy that could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. There were some really serious matters in that. To me, one of the most significant was on page 140, you have a meeting between Paul Manafort and Klimnik, who has been identified by the FBI as connected to the Russian government, giving up polling data and talking about battleground states, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Does that sound familiar? I mean, that, to me, is a very serious matter that needs further examination. And there are matters like that throughout the report. There's a place where Mr. Gates, Manafort's assistant, quotes Donald Trump in a car ride saying there'll be more leaks, there'll be more emails coming out soon. I mean, there are lots of threads like that. Maybe not a criminal conspiracy, but a very serious matter. And that gets to the basic point here. I think the American people need the facts. Mm-hmm. They're going to have to make a decision in 2020 about whether they want to continue this presidency. And in order to do that, they need the information. And I think Robert Mueller's testimony would be important, although I think nobody should expect any bombshells. He's not going to come in and say anything different than what he said in the report. He's a very careful guy. The report is over 400 pages long. I think they made their point. So I think it would be useful to hear from him and perhaps set the record straight to some extent from what Mr. Barr, Attorney General Barr, said. But I don't think people should expect, there's going to be some great new smoking gun that's going to change the course of this. I think the information is pretty damning, and it should be out there. My recommendation is read the report. It's pretty readable. It takes maybe a couple of days on a weekend, but it's stunning, and it's full of very disturbing information.
Just about 3% of voters in polls say they've actually read the full report. Just very quickly, one more question on this. This won't happen in the Senate with Republicans in control of the Senate, but the House is threatening various types of contempt if documents aren't turned over, if Don McGahn doesn't testify. Can you level with the American people, though, and tell them what's the impact of that? So the House holds Don McGahn in contempt. Say the House holds William Barr in contempt. What does that matter?
Well, I think the House has to be careful here, and I'm not in a position to advise the House as to what to do. They're going to make their own decisions. But I think as a parent, I used to always say, pick your battles. And I think they should pick the most important issues that they believe will contribute to the public discourse on this issue, and not get distracted by every conflict they have with the administration. On the other hand, Congress, as I've heard probably 20 times already this morning, is a co-equal branch of government. It has a responsibility to do oversight. It has a responsibility and the power to obtain documents. And there has to be a line drawn somewhere where they say the administration can't just totally stonewall.
I want to talk to you about Iran, which is obviously a very important issue this morning. The United States has made the decision to send a carrier group to the Persian Gulf, also send bombers to the area. National Security Advisor John Bolton says it's to send a clear and unmistakable message to the Iranian regime that any attack on U.S. interests or on those of our allies will be met with unrelenting force. We've learned in the last 24 hours the administration feels there was specific intelligence about plans the Iranians have made, maybe not imminent plans, but plans they have there. You just returned from the region. You went to Iraq. The United States has between 5,000 and 7,000 troops in the region. What is your view of the Iranian threat there to U.S. interests?
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I'm not John Bolton, although there may be a superficial resemblance. I get that occasionally in airports. I think this is a very difficult and somewhat dangerous course. I don't usually read things on television, but I want to read something that I think may put this into important context. This is John Bolton in 2017, 2 years ago, just before he became National Security Advisor. He says the outcome of the president's policy review should be to determine that the Ayatollah Khomeini's 1979 revolution will not last past its 40th birthday, which, by the way, was this past February. The declared policy of the United States should be the overthrow of the mullah's regime in Tehran. The behavior and the objectives of the regime are not going to change, and therefore the only solution is to change the regime itself. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. You take that sentiment and add to the fact that we've drastically increased the sanctions on Iran. We've just declared the Quds Force a terrorist organization. We're moving carriers. I have this creepy feeling that this is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and that there are motions toward a confrontation with Iran that it would be a very, very serious conflict. When I was over there...
Hang on 1 second, though. You don't think that Iran poses a threat to U.S. interests in the region? Because if you're making the weapons of mass destruction comparison, there weren't weapons of mass destruction.
I don't want to go that far. Clearly, they're a malicious actor, and they have Hezbollah in Lebanon, and they're affiliated with Hamas. I'm not saying they're good guys by any means. But the question is, are we taking steps that are going to lead us toward a war or a real conflict that's dangerous? Now, what I heard in Iraq was that the Shia militias, who are not really controlled by anybody, some of them are connected to Iran, some of them aren't, they're not controlled by the government, they're restless, and they would like to take shots at some of our people over there. Ironically, what I was told was Iran is holding them back. Iran is avoiding a confrontation with the United States and has issued what amounts to a moratorium on attacks on Americans. So what somebody said was, you got to be careful when you poke the bear, especially when you're in the cage with the bear. I mean, we're very vulnerable over there, and our people are doing a fantastic job. I spent the better part of a week there and met with politicians in Iraq and our State Department people, our military people. They're doing a great job, but this is we don't want to cave in to Iran's malicious actions, but we also don't want to slip over into provoking a confrontation that would be very damaging to our people in Iraq, but destabilizing Iraq, but also lead to a real serious confrontation with Iran. That's what worries me, is you got Bolton's predisposition, and then you've got 3 or 4 actions in the last 2 weeks designed to poke Iran in the eye. I'm uncomfortable about where this is headed.
And now we're hearing that Iran may remove itself or suspend parts of the nuclear deal that they still have in place with Europe. Senator Angus King from Maine, we appreciate you being with us. I wouldn't say John Bolton, I would say Tom Selleck.
Hey, there you go.
If I ran into you at the airport. Thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thanks, John.